in that MTN posted a solid performance in a challenging operating environment. Now, despite the ongoing pressures in the macroeconomic and geopolitical as well as the regulatory environments across all of its markets, the company saw growth from its data and fintech services, including voice services. Joining us now to unpack these numbers and, of course, the outlook is MTN's Group CFO, Tsholo Molefe. A very good evening to you, Tsholo, and thank you for joining us this evening. Let's speak about some of those big growth points for MTN at the moment. I did mention voice as one of them, but one would say that fintech has performed rather well for the business since the investment in it.
No, thank you very much. Yes, and I think maybe just to take you through, a number of service revenue bearers, because it is important. I think, from a voice perspective, most markets you'd have thought that, voice should actually be declining, but we are actually seeing, still room for growth. We've seen double-digit actually growth from voice in both Nigeria and Ghana and some of the markets. So, obviously, delivering 6% on the voice side. I think where there was a challenge was, of course, in South Africa, where we saw, a decline of 13%. So that partially offset the double-digit decline we saw in voice. And it's really coming from, voice optimization initiatives that we continuously do across our markets, particularly Nigeria, Ghana, and the rest of the WECA and SIA regions. On data side, we are encouraged as well by strong data traffic growth of 19%. If we exclude Iran, we saw, data traffic growth of 36%, leading to, that 24% growth that you saw in data. So we're essentially still seeing structurally higher demand for data and fintech services. Fintech, very encouraging. We're starting to see advanced services growth, even though they are still, some of them are still nascent, but in total we saw a 67% growth in advanced services, which is payments and e-commerce, remittance, bank tech. Withdrawal services still contribute about 56% of the fintech's revenue, but we saw the growth in withdrawal as well as transfer services growing by 17% and 33% respectively. So really encouraging in a tough economic environment with elevated levels of inflation, FX volatility. You would have seen our high cost, particularly on the operating expenses side, and that's really because of CPI impacts and forex devaluation in markets like Nigeria and high fuel costs in various markets. Of course, in South Africa as well, we've seen electricity price hikes. We've seen cost of fuel going up, and as we roll out sites to improve the resilience of our network, we obviously have had to obviously pay more for fuel and increase our security costs to protect our sites from vandalism.
Yeah, and let's speak a little bit more about that, the impact of load shedding on the network provision to customers and the costs associated to that for MTN. And I suppose the outlook in this regard is going to be quite bleak in that you're going to need to continue spending more for the security, as you say, but also on measures to mitigate against the negative implications of load shedding. So how exactly was the network impacted by it, and how much is the business spending to make sure services remain as best as they can in South Africa in particular during those times?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. I think, just contextually, we talked about margin erosion in South Africa at EBITDA level, and we saw, the impact of, load shedding, in terms of, the efforts that we are making to improve network availability. Of about 0.8 percentage points, I think 0.8 to 0.9 percentage points impact on our EBITDA margin. We've invested a lot of capex in the first half of the year. Of course, we spent in total 4 billion rand. Part of it was to improve the resilience of the network, and we saw, we added 8,000 sites during the period. And we saw network availability improving to over 90%. But we also invested in 3G, 4G and added, 485, 5G site. But we've actually, held back in terms of accelerating 5G, just so that, the teams could focus on, improving the network. We do expect to see, better performance in the second half of the year as a result of, the gains that we expect from, improving the resilience of our network.
Yeah. Tell us about the opportunity that this MasterCard deal with MTN, the fintech business, I suppose the cornerstone there being the Momo. What does that unlock for consumers in terms of opportunities, financial inclusion, and of course the movement of money across your different markets?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it is certainly a landmark transaction, we believe, in Africa, and a key milestone for us as MTN as part of our Ambition 2025, because, we hold the view and the strategic intent that we want to lead digital solutions for Africa's progress and driving financial inclusion across, the continent. So we entered into this partnership with MasterCard as part of, our structural separation of our fintech business, which is just one of the platforms we will be carving out of the business. So this is really to support growth and profitability of the fintech business across, a number of verticals, accelerating growth of payments and remittance, sharing of skills and technology, infrastructure development, because we were really looking for a partner that would come with a commercial know-how and technology to be able to help us scale and grow the business. So what that means, of course, for our consumers is that they will be able to digitize their payments and accept payments through the MasterCard services. They even be able to get access to the card itself, the MasterCard itself. So we really see it as a key milestone in terms of, enabling those who do not have access to bank accounts, access to financial services to transact in this way.
Very briefly, if you will, Tsholo, and finally, the Department of International Relations earlier, a few months ago, indicated that it was going to be engaging with some African markets where South African companies operate because of the various challenges that businesses operating in the rest of the African continent face. Have you had any engagement with the department regarding this? And just generally then, has that had an impact positively on your key markets in the rest of the African continent, like you mentioned, Ghana and Nigeria?
Yes, thank you very much. And I think maybe to take the opportunity to really thank the department and the minister herself, Minister Naledi Pandor, because she has really been, assisting in just being the voice in Africa around supporting the multinationals. And I think it's an important point because, obviously we operate, across various markets as multinationals. It's important that, there's ease of doing business in those markets. And we bring, of course, into those markets, technology, skills, requirement. And I think, the Department of International Affairs has been really instrumental in having the right conversations with regulators in the markets. Of course, it is a journey. I think, it's obviously the advocacy has to continue. It is an ongoing journey of, stakeholder engagement and making sure that we can get through to the regulators and government. But we believe that there's progress being made, and we would like to thank, the department, especially the minister, for taking, a stance there.